Hello, Widowhood. Today, my guest is Tawana Proctor-Robinson, and she is literally one of the founding members of Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, our private Facebook group. And she is so low key and so quiet, but so intentional. I want you to listen very closely to this conversation. And if you have a loved one, or maybe you yourself are struggling with a drug addiction, pay attention to the words that she has to say and her journey that she's been on and the wisdom that she is sharing. Let it be life changing for you. Let's get into this conversation now.
Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Tawana.
Hello.
Welcome to the Widowhood. But I guess it's not really welcome to the Widowhood because you're kind of already part of it because you're part of our private group. But welcome to this conversation.
Thank you.
So, as I mentioned, Tawana is part of our private Facebook group, and I am super glad to have her part of the group. But she wanted to share her journey, and I appreciate her for wanting to do that. Tawana, where are you from originally?
I'm from Gary, Indiana, where I now currently reside back in Gary, Indiana.
Oh, okay. So you started in Gary. So where have you traveled and lived? What does that look like for you?
I lived in Indianapolis, Indiana for 31 years, and then I ended up moving back here to take care of my mom last November. So I've been here a year, back home for a year.
Okay. So what prompted you to move to Indianapolis? Bleh.
My first husband and I moved to Indianapolis to have just a better life.
Okay. How did you like Indianapolis?
I loved Indianapolis. There was so much to do and easy to get around. Yeah, I loved it. But I had to move back to take care of my mom. And I knew I'd eventually probably move it back to Gary, but I didn't know when.
Oh, okay. So tell me, before you met your first husband, what were some things in your life or what were you doing?
Before I met my first husband, I'm my first husband and I got married when I was 18, so I was
Okay.
in high school.
Okay. So what did you do
Yeah.
but did you have some interest, any activities in high school
Oh,
or what did that
yes,
look
sure.
like?
I
Okay.
was in the concert choir, gospel choir. I was in marching band and concert band. I modeled on our modeling troupe at Horseman High School here in
Okay.
Gary, Indiana, Elmo Vogue. Yeah, so I did a lot of things in high school.
Okay. So of those, those are, I did not know any of that about you. So tell me what type of modeling things you did.
Oh, I modeled on our modeling troupe, and we had shows, fashion shows at school, and we modeled, all types of fashion. So,
Do you have
yeah.
any pictures of that still?
I don't.
Oh,
And this was
wow.
before the era of taking pictures all the time and stuff. So,
Right. In a
yeah,
yearbook, maybe, or something like that?
mm, maybe in the yearbook. My senior year, I didn't take a lot of pictures in the yearbook. I only had my senior picture in there.
Okay. So you said marching band. So what instrument did you play in the marching band?
I was first chair clarinet.
Wow. Do you still play a clarinet or did you let
No,
that
I don't. I
go?
let
Okay.
it go. Yeah, after high school, I played a couple years after that
Hmm.
for the graduation because my band teacher asked me to come back and play for the seniors. So I did that a couple years after I graduated. But after that, I haven't picked up a clarinet. But my oldest son played clarinet in high school, and my daughter played clarinet in high school. So
Okay, so you passed it on to your children. Okay.
yes.
And you still do have a love for music, if I recall correctly.
I do. I do.
Okay.
I love music. As a matter of fact, my husband and I, my late husband and I, Victor, we recorded and wrote some songs, and they're actually on YouTube.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, on our YouTube pages.
Okay. And so we will place that a link to that in the show notes. So
Okay.
so they can find that. Do you remember what it's called in YouTube?
No, but I will let you know, and
Okay.
I'll send you the link
Oh,
actually.
okay. So how did you meet your first husband?
My first husband or the
Your first
Victor?
husband. Your first husband.
Okay. My first husband and I met a month after my daughter was born, in June of 1990.
Okay.
And yeah, we got married about 7 or 8 months after we met.
Okay. And how long were you guys married?
We were married about 4 years, 4 or 5 years, not
Okay.
very long,
Okay. What
just
shifted
enough
in?
to have two sons,
Okay.
long
So,
enough to have two sons.
okay. How old are the boys now? I mean, you're men now, I
31
should
and
say.
31 and 29.
Wow. Not absolutely men, not
And
boys. I should say that for sure.
And my 31-year-old will be 32 in January.
Wow. And where do your children live in proximity to you?
My daughter lives here in Gary with my two grandchildren, and my oldest son lives in Philadelphia, and my youngest son lives in Bloomington, Indiana. Both of my sons graduated from Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, but my youngest son decided to stay and become a school teacher. So he did that for several years after he graduated.
Okay. Wow. There cannot be enough men in education. That is a field where people are needed.
So
Definitely.
true.
So, after the divorce from your first husband, what did life look like for you then?
So after the divorce from my first husband, I got married to my second husband, who turned out to be a drug addict, and he was very physically abusive. He wasn't verbally abusive or emotionally, but when he was trying to get a fix and I wouldn't give him money, he would physically abuse me. But up until that point, he would be nice. So it was like I never really saw it coming.
So let's talk. Thank you for sharing that, Tawana. Let's talk about
Sure.
back up a little bit. So, how did you and Victor meet?
So Victor and I met, and it's odd, but we met at a plasma center donating plasma. And
Okay.
I was sitting there waiting for my initial interview. They interview you and take your vitals before you can donate each time. And I was sitting there, and he came and sat next to me and just started talking to me. Throughout our conversation, at the end of our conversation, rather, he asked me what was I going to do when I left there, and I said I'm going to the movies. And he said, "Can I go?" I was like, "It's a public place. I don't care." So we went on our first date the day we met.
And what movie did you see? Do you remember?
We, I believe we saw Starsky and Hutch. The
Okay.
new one, the newest
Okay.
version. And we went to Hollywood Bar and Film in downtown Indianapolis, Indiana, which
Okay.
is now closed. But yeah,
What year
where
was
you can
that? I'm sorry. Go
it
ahead.
was it was 2004.
Okay.
It was downtown Indianapolis where you could have dinner and drinks and watch the movie at the same time. It
Oh
was one
yeah.
of the first places that did that.
Oh wow. Those are so popular now. That's kind of like a common thing now. Before you
Right,
just went to the
right,
movies, now you have a whole experience.
right.
Okay. So, what did the next date look like?
The next day, well, actually, I didn't see him for about a month after that. I
Okay.
had major surgery, and I didn't see him for a while. And then when I saw him again, we talked and we talked, and then we talked on the phone, and we would be on the phone for like all night, all evening, all day. And we never wanted to hang up, and we just shared our whole life story with each other. We felt comfortable right at the start,
Okay.
telling each other everything about ourselves. And then it was funny because we were both trying to figure out who sung the song "I Call Your Name."
Okay.
And I said Switch, and he said DeBarge. So we called his aunt on the phone, and we three-wayed her, and she told us it was in fact Switch, but one of the DeBarge brothers was in Switch, so we were technically both right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, so that was funny.
Yes.
We always remembered that.
Right. So how long did you guys date?
We dated for 5 years before we got married. And
Okay.
we actually lived together 4 years before we got married.
Okay. So tell me some more about the dating experience to Victor, what that was like.
Oh, it was fun. We were almost inseparable because every time I would go over one of my friends' house, even my female friends, he would go with me.
Wow.
We would play video games or play cards or watch a movie or something or play Monopoly, but he always wanted to be with me. And we spent so much time together when we were dating. And then he had a cousin whose house we would go over a lot too, and spend time with him and his fiance and their children.
Okay.
And then he took me around his family, his grandmother, and introduced me to his mother. And he lived with his mother at the time, so she told me I was going to be his wife, and I was like, no. I'm thinking, no, I've been married twice, I'm not trying to do this again.
You had
But
been
she
married
said,
twice before Victor?
I had, yes.
Okay. Okay,
And
go ahead.
so she said, you're going to be my son's wife. She said, you're just the kind of woman that my son needs in his life. And at the time, I was going to a sanctified church and wearing skirts down to my ankle. And when he met me, I had on a skirt down to my ankles. So I did that for like the first couple of years of our relationship. And then he finally said, well, why don't you wear some jeans sometime? And
Hmm.
I did, and I started wearing jeans and pants more often. But
Okay. So
yeah.
how did it go from dating to living with each other? What was that transition? How did that start?
Oh, well, it was a very unusual situation. My mother-in-law actually called me before she was my mother-in-law, but his mother called me, and she said, I'm afraid that my son is going to die out here, out east Indianapolis. It's very dangerous. And can he come and live with you? And I was like, okay, and I thought about it for a minute, but I said, okay. And when he came to live with me, we were still just really not serious about each other, but we were like very good friends, we considered at the time. And one day he was in the bathroom cutting his hair. He cut his own hair. He was ambidextrous,
Okay.
so he could use both his hands, and he cut his own hair. And he was in the mirror cutting his hair, and he said, you know what? He said, I'm tired of us just being friends. I want us to be more than that. And I kind of blew him off. I didn't tell him yes right away. Eventually, I told him okay. But at first, I was thinking, he's a pretty boy. He's from the projects. He's got this thug mentality, which in all honesty, secretly, I was attracted to that, but I had a past with someone that had that same, makeup, and I didn't want to go down that road again. But Victor and I were like the best of friends. We didn't keep secrets from each other, even stuff that was inappropriate to tell your girlfriend or somebody that you're dating. He told me so.
Okay. So I have a question. When he moved
Sure.
in, what was the sleeping arrangement?
When he moved in, at first he slept on the couch and I slept
Okay.
in the bed. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And how long of being together did that shift?
Ooh, that's hard to say. I don't remember. Probably about 3 or 4 months. Not
Okay.
very long.
Okay. And so
Mhm.
once you realized the pattern or the type of person, you just gave into it, or what made you not want to turn around and do something different?
Victor was very charming, and
Okay.
he was very kind, and he would do anything for you.
Mm,
Um, so it was hard not to fall for him.
okay.
You know, initially out the gate, I really was attracted to him because he was a very nice young looking young man, tall, dark, and handsome, literally.
Okay.
And so I immediately was attracted to him physically, but I didn't want what I felt like might be the drama that would come behind all that. And
Okay.
plus he had a previous relationship that I felt like wasn't done.
Okay. And all those good keys to watch out for. So
Mhm.
so now we go from a 3 months him living with you, and what was that like, that part of the relationship?
It was okay. We both worked, so we would get up in the morning and go to work and everything. And I got an opportunity for a job, and I turned the job down. And he was like, "What did he say you were gonna? What did they say you were gonna be doing?" He was like, "Girl, if you don't call them people back and get that job." And it was a supervisor in a bookstore at Ivy Tech Community College.
Okay.
And yeah, so he encouraged me to take that job. And I did, in fact, take the job, and I worked there for a couple years.
Okay. And what type of work did Victor do?
He did all kinds of work, like he worked in warehouses. He did, when he died, he was working as a maintenance man at an apartment complex. And he loved that job. Oh, he absolutely loved it. And they loved him. After he passed, they were so supportive of me and did everything they could to try to help me. So, yeah.
Okay.
Plus, he was a barber naturally. He
Mm-hmm.
cut hair, so he had a lot of clients, especially some young children, because he was good at doing the children's hair.
That
And
charming personality.
yeah, cause
Yes.
it's yeah, cause it's hard to deal with children when they're getting a haircut. They don't want to be still. And then he had a young man that was autistic
Okay.
whose hair that he would cut. And his mom was like, I don't know how you do it, but nobody else could get this done. And so
Um,
she absolutely, adored Victor and appreciated him for being able to communicate with her son and get his hair cut without him really getting, very upset.
there's a lot to be said for that type of personality that Victor
Yes.
had, to be able to be that consoling and just help people like that. Thank you for sharing. What are some other just ways that Victor just helped people, and the way you talk about him, what he's done?
He was the type of person, he would do anything for his friends, and he would get up in the middle of the night if they got stranded, if they got a flat tire, if they were in the hospital, anything. He was just that loyal friend. And to a fault, because a lot of times I would be like, why are you running to them when you need somebody? You come to me. You don't have any of those people. They're not there for you. But he
Okay.
he did anyway, and he didn't mind. He didn't complain about it either.
Wow. So you said you guys dated 4 or 5 years. At what point did you start saying this is the type of, like, after the two relationships that didn't work, that made you start thinking maybe I would do this again?
So, like I told you before, I was in a sanctified church, and I didn't feel comfortable living with him and not being married.
Okay.
And for a while, he kind of brushed off the marriage topic, and I would talk to him about it, because I didn't want us to continue living together and not being married.
Okay.
And one day we went to dinner, and he said, "Do you want to get engaged?" And I said, "Sure." And so we were engaged for about a year before we got married. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
So I want to circle back to something. What is, because everyone that's listening may not have an understanding, how would you define a sanctified church and what does that look like for somebody?
Well, Sanctified Church is a church where, the church that I was in was called the Church of God in Christ, or
Okay.
as we short for short is Kojic.
Okay.
And we believed in wearing long skirts and not wearing a lot of makeup, and we believed in setting our lives aside for God to use us.
Okay.
So um, so I definitely had a conscience about our living arrangements because of that.
Okay.
And yeah, sanctified, we just considered ourselves set apart for God's use. And we
Okay.
tried to do what was pleasing to God above all else. So
Okay.
yeah.
So how, and thank you for explaining that. How was your life, or what were things that you were doing as far as setting yourself aside for God's use, or how did that show up in your life?
Like I said, even though Victor and I lived together for the first 3 or 4 or 5 months, I didn't sleep with him, and I kept myself pure from that. But of course, after a while, I fell for the temptation, and so I ended up not going that church anymore. And actually, I kind of lost touch with religion altogether, in
Okay.
all honesty. I have a lot of reasons for that, but that's another topic for another day.
Okay.
I still believe in God. I strongly believe in God. I develop my relationship with Him every day, and I read my Bible and pray. I do believe in the power of prayer. Yeah, so that's what happened then.
Okay. And thank you. What I was, I apologize for not making the question clear. When you were talking about setting yourself apart or being used for God, in my mind there was maybe different things you did in the community, or different people you were serving, or what you were doing to serve God, being in that sanctified, set apart state is what I was
Oh,
actually
okay.
referring
Yeah.
to. How you were walking out your faith in life daily.
Oh, okay. So how I was walking out my faith, like I said, I prayed regularly. I helped. I really don't like to tell things that I did as far as community service and
Okay.
giving and stuff, because I feel like that's between you and God, and
Okay.
you shouldn't brag about those things. What you do as far as charity.
Okay, well, let me ask this
So.
question. How would one know they were different in a sanctified church than a different church? What are some of the things that in that experience that would set that aside?
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, the wearing of the long skirts and not showing your legs, and
Okay.
I mean, this is religion, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not involved anymore. But
Okay.
this is what it entailed in their eyes, was the wearing of the long skirts, not wearing a lot of makeup, not cursing, or cussing rather,
Hmm.
because there's a difference between cursing and cussing.
There is.
And you went to church about 3 or 4 times during the week, and on Sundays twice.
Okay.
So yeah, and then like you said, we do community services for us, um, food pantries and clothing drives and stuff like that, and raising
Okay.
money for the needy. But yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that, because sometimes people hear a phrase or a statement and it doesn't quite resonate to them to break it down. So I like to try to share things that may not be something common that
No
someone has heard
problem.
before. Thank you. So Victor's, you're out eating and he says you want to get engaged and you go, yes. And so
Right.
what happens,
Finally.
and what happens from there?
So after that, we were engaged for a year.
Okay.
And in all honesty, after that year, a situation happened and our house got shot up. And
Mm,
after our house got shot up, we ended up moving in with someone that he knew. And after we moved in with them and I stayed with him, he was like, yeah, it's time. He was like, we need to go ahead and get married. He was
okay.
like, if you stay with me through that, and he was like, um, I definitely feel like you could be my wife, and we can have a life together, and me try to change my life
Okay.
and not be involved in the streets and stuff like I was. So and being having a background of church and religion, I felt like I could pray whatever issues he had away. And
Okay.
I anointed his feet and his head. I anointed his hands while he was asleep. I prayed over him while he was asleep. I did all the things, and you have to realize that you cannot pray against someone's own will.
Correct.
God gives us all free will. And if it's not that person's will at that time to change, or if they're not putting forth effort to change, even if they say that they want to, then God is not going to move on that.
Okay. And
Mhm.
so thank you for sharing that. So what what was the wedding like? Or did you elope or was it a
So
ceremony,
we
close
had a
friends
wedding.
or okay.
So our wedding, it was just the best day of my life next to having my children.
Mm,
It was very intimate. But as long as my father was there to walk me down the aisle, it was the best day of my life.
okay.
All of our children were there. My daughter came from out of town to be at the wedding, and she was going to be my maid of honor. But she had to go back to Gary the day before the wedding because she got a job. Um,
Okay.
she got called in for a job that she had just interviewed for. So she couldn't put that off. So
Okay.
other than that, all of our children were there. We didn't pay for anything.
Oh
And this is
wow.
how I felt. This is how I felt it was God ordained, because we didn't pay for the wedding. Our pastor had just become the pastor of the church. So we were going to be the first couple. We were the first couple that he married as the pastor of the church. So
Okay.
his niece was a wedding planner, event
Okay.
planner. So she said, "Oh, I'm gonna do it." She was like, "I'm gonna do your wedding." I was like, "We don't have money for that." She was like, "Girl, I'm not charging you nothing." She was like, "Just get your dress and you get his tux, and I'll make the cake and everything." So
Wow.
that's what she did, and they decorated the church and did everything the night before the wedding. Before our wedding rehearsal, I picked up my husband's aunt, and she asked me a question. She said, "I want to ask you one question." She said, "If Victor never changes, will you still love him?" And I just immediately said yes. And I thought about that throughout our marriage. That's one of the things that kept me with him, was to remember that I said that I would love him no matter whether or not he changed or not. And that night before the wedding too, before our rehearsal, his aunt had given me a CD, a two CD album of some wedding songs.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked one that I wanted his cousin to sing as I walked down the aisle. And she sang it. She has a beautiful voice like an angel. And she memorized that song overnight and sang as I walked down the aisle, and it was just, I was just so happy. It was just a beautiful day for me and for
Wow.
him. And we stood at the altar and made each other laugh while we were standing there to keep from crying. He was making faces at me. and, and it was funny because when my dad walked me down the aisle, when we got down to the center, he reached out and grabbed my hand, and the pastor said, "Not yet." He said, "Not yet. Hold on." And we all started laughing. He was
Okay.
anxious.
Yes. I have a question, if you don't mind. What
No, I don't.
when his aunt asked if Victor never changed, do you know what she was alluding to or what things about him to change or not change that was concerning to her?
Yes, I was. I do know. Just to go back a little bit, while we were dating, um, one day I came over to his mother's house, and he was asleep on the couch, and his aunt was there, and she was praying over him. And I didn't realize it, and I didn't know until that day that he had a drug problem. He had been on a binge and had been out a day or two, and she came over to pray for him. And I was like, "Oh God, not another one." And I was skeptical, but then, like I said, I was younger then, and I wasn't as wise as I am now, and didn't realize that I couldn't pray the addiction away.
Okay. So let me thank you for explaining that. When he was asleep on his mother's couch, what part of your relationship did that happen and his aunt was praying over
We
him?
we were still dating at the time.
So in that first year or down the road, like how
Yeah,
long
the
did you guys?
first year. Yeah,
Okay, okay. But
yeah.
didn't so you saw her praying. At what point did you find out she was praying about the drug addiction? That day or sometime later?
That day I realized, as she was praying for him, and as he wasn't really responsive to anything that was going on in the room, because he was just that tired and he was coming down off of the drugs.
Okay,
That's when I realized, yeah, he's on drugs. And I was like, I said I would never do this again with another person that was on drugs. So um, I went against my own self, and what I had decided, my own decision, not to be with another person on drugs, and I did it anyway.
and
And in all honesty, I don't regret it, because he loved me. He showed me he loved me. He was at every milestone that I accomplished in my life. He was there for me. Every milestone he accomplished during our relationship and our marriage, over the course of the 18 years, I was there for him. He accepted me for who I was, and I accepted him for who he was. I have bipolar disorder, and I actually had to be hospitalized at one point at the beginning of our marriage. And I didn't think that he would stay with me, because after that, and he came to the hospital, he talked to the doctors, he encouraged me to take my medicine, because for years before that, I got diagnosed when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And the medicine that they would give me at that time would have me very lethargic and very tired, and I felt like a zombie, so I wouldn't take it. um, but this time, when I was hospitalized shortly after we had gotten married, um, he encouraged me, to take my medicine, and it was a different medicine. It wasn't the same stuff that they was giving me back then, because times change, and they evolve and come up with different treatments for things, and better treatments. So yeah, so he accepted me for that, and I accepted him and what he was going through and dealing with. And he always said he wanted to change. There was a lot of trauma in his childhood, and he self-medicated to try to forget those things. And I tried to encourage him, that that wasn't the way, that there was another way, that God, could deliver him and set him free from that. And he had a relationship with God. I know people don't like to believe that a person that was on drugs or living a certain type of lifestyle would have a relationship with God. But we're all sinners saved by grace, and none of us are perfect, and we're all dealing with something. And God accepts us, and He can deliver. But like I said, He won't go against your will.
Thank you for explaining that. And I want to circle back to something that you said, that the trauma in Victor's life and is in dealing with that and self-medicating. I know for me, when my late husband passed, there was a choice between how to manage that grief. And
Hmm.
oftentimes, and I say grief in this regards as it relates to the death of a loved one, but grief manifests in our life in so many different ways with different
Hmm.
traumas that we've experienced,
Hmm.
whether it was abuse in a household growing up or never being able to express your emotions, different things where we're, I want to say, stuffed inside of ourselves and not being able to express those emotions freely. And oftentimes, from talking to therapists and other mental health wellness professionals, a lot of times where people are dealing with self medicating ways, it's because of grief that was not managed correctly. And
Hmm.
thank you for mentioning that. People don't start drug addictions a lot of times just because it's because of masking something else that they're not dealing with. And they never feel like that the drug is going to control them, that they're going to control it and not being able to do that. So thank you for mentioning that part of it because it's not just they did drugs. What was the it that led them to it? So thank
Right.
you for talking about the things that Victor struggled with. And I dare to agree that when we leave this world, we're all going to leave still struggling with something. But people
Hmm.
like to often point the fingers at the other people that whatever they're dealing with is worse than my struggle. But we all have something that we're struggling with and trying to live in this world.
Right. And he went from and he was a product of his environment. Like I said, he grew up in the projects on the east side of Indianapolis in Amberwood
Okay.
projects, which used to be Park Chateau.
Okay.
And that's what people did out there. They did drugs, they sold drugs. And he went from being a drug dealer to being a drug addict. And they say in the streets, don't get high on your own supply, but that's what ended up happening. And he ended up becoming addicted. So, unfortunately, he became a victim of his own demise. So,
So I want to ask you, thank you. If outside of everything else you've spoken about, what would be something people like, I didn't know that about Victor, or I would have never thought Victor did that. Uh, those good things about him that just would have been like, I would have had no clue that that's something Victor would have done.
he played the drums for our church and for several churches that we attended. Some people know, a lot of people don't know, but he was a great drummer. And also, he was a producer, a music producer. We had a music studio in our home, and he would wake me up sometime in the middle of the night. Like I turn to him and be like, "Sing this for me." The only difference was he wasn't physically abusive, but he would be like, "Sing this for me," or "I thought of this," and he would wake me up to record something, and then he'd get mad at me because I'm too tired to sing or I'm not enthusiastic about it. But we would eventually get it done, and we came up with, like I said, some music, and they were all gospel songs. That's what people would be surprised to know, that they were all
Wow.
gospel songs.
Thank you.
And we some of them, he used poems. I write poems, and sometimes he would use some of my poems and turn them into a song. And he mastered it and produced it and did the beats and everything himself. Yeah.
Wow. Any other things about Victor you want to share that somebody may not know about him?
Mm, like I say, he was ambidextric, so he could
Okay.
use both hands, and he loved cutting hair. I tried to encourage him to go to barber's college, but he was like, "No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to make this a career. I do it because I like to do it, and I want to be able to do it when I feel like it, and for people that's close to me, and people that I know." So
Nice.
yeah.
At what point in your life with Victor did you start seeing that the drugs was going to be just getting out of control or more than could
After,
handle?
After his mother died, she lived with us for 6 years before she died. She was on dialysis and had a quadruple bypass. I thought that they were mistaken, but I spoke to her doctor myself, and he said she had a quadruple bypass. So after she was diagnosed with stomach cancer, she had surgery to remove the small portion of cancer that was in her stomach. And she had complications after the surgery and had to have a tracheotomy. And the trach and being on dialysis, they did not have a facility in Indiana that could house her with a trach and having to have dialysis. So we ended up having to move her to Illinois in order to be able to have a place for her to go because she had the trach and she was on dialysis, and she was too ill to come home. So after we moved her to Illinois, um, we would go and visit her on the weekends, and it was just a real strain on us to have to keep going um, out of town on the weekends, back and forth. But we did it because we didn't want her to feel like we put her there and just left her there by herself. So
Right.
we would go on the weekends, and then one time when we went, she said, "I want to come home."
Mm,
And so we brought her home, and she was in the hospital, of course, because she still was too ill to be at home. And she ended up passing in the hospital. So after she passed, he went into this deep, dark depression, and he was unable to really get out of the bed aside from going to work. And he would come home and get back in the bed. And then eventually, um, and then the drug addiction got severe at this point. And after it got so bad, for the first like couple years after she passed, she passed in 2016, June 19th of 2016. I had just started my job, a new job, July, not June, excuse me. I just started a new job July 11th. And July 19th, I got the call while I was at work that she had passed, and they couldn't get in touch with him. He was at home. They had told us the night before that she was going to pass soon. So I spent the night with her, but I had to go to work in the morning. And when I left, her niece and her sister came up there to be with her. And she passed while they were there, and they couldn't get in touch with him. So they got in touch with me. And so I left work and I went home, and I had to break the news to him. And he didn't want to go to the hospital, but I said, "Baby, you're her next of kin. You have to go." And so we went to the hospital, and we spent time with her after she had passed in the room until the mortuary came to get her, the funeral home. So he was in a really dark place, and there was nothing anybody could do or say to make him feel any better. So he would get high more often. And so after a few years, probably about 3 or 4 years, he started getting better as far as the drug use was, and he wasn't doing it as often. And he was kind of coming out of that dark place. And so when fentanyl came on the scene, and he was hearing about uh, people getting dying from fentanyl overdose, he told me about it. I didn't know anything about it. um, I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot from my previous husband, my second husband, about addiction and about drugs. And because I don't use myself, but just being with them, I learned so much because I saw so much. And he ended up um, telling me about it. And I asked him a question. I say, well, babe, don't you think you should stop because it can happen to you? And he said, oh, no, it can't happen to me because I know where I get my drugs from. I know who I get it from. And I was like, but you don't know where they get it from. You don't know what people do to it. So it can happen. And sure enough, that's what ended up happening.
So thank you. You approached me about wanting to have this conversation. And what were some things that you wanted people to know and to gain from this discussion?
First of all, it can't happen to you. They're putting it in weed, they're putting it in cocaine. Don't feel like just because you know who you get your drugs from that it cannot happen to you. I was at first I was not wanting to tell anyone his cause of death after I found out. At first, I really literally didn't know, and they told me he died in his sleep. And that's what the coroner told me on the scene, because I did, in fact, go to where his body was and where he died and saw him before they put him in the coroner's wagon. But yeah, it can happen. And not only that, um, I didn't want to tell anyone after I found out, and I felt ashamed, and I felt like, how would people look at me and judge me? But in all honesty, I don't care. I feel like this is something that needs to be told. And what encouraged me to tell my story as far as about Victor and his addiction is that DMX, the rapper, his daughter Sonova, I think she's like 11 years old, and she started when she was 10 years old, advocating for families of people that have lost a loved one due to fentanyl poisoning. And I said, if this little girl can talk about her dad's addiction and his death due to fentanyl overdose and poisoning, then I should open my mouth and say something so that people that know me or know someone that's on drugs or is on drugs themselves can see that this can happen, and it has happened even to people that you know. And that if you're on drugs, please stop, please get help, please seek counseling. There's inpatient and outpatient rehab. You don't have to go into a rehab if you have a job and taking care of a family and you're a functioning addict and feel like you can't stop your life to get treatment. There are so many ways that you can get treatment.
Thank you for sharing that. If I'm with someone, are are there signs that you learned that looking back in hindsight like this was a sign or that was a sign. Would you mind sharing what some of those
No,
signs were, if you would, please? Thank
I
you.
don't mind. Yes, there are signs that a person is using cocaine or crack. Um, Signs like they are make excuses to leave home at all untimely hours of the night and day. They will move their fingers a lot, and it seems like it's almost uncontrollable. Um, Things like that. A lot of times, people they use cocaine and crack. Well, from my experience, from my two husbands who used, they got real quiet and seemed distant, as though they were zoned out. And you could be talking to them, they're not paying any attention to you because their focus is stuck, and they can't concentrate on what you're saying or the fact that you're even talking to them.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I want to, you, from what you shared in this conversation, other, you have dealt with grief yourself. What are some healthy coping mechanisms that you have found dealing with grief compared to people that are self-medicated?
So, dealing with the passing of my husband, I don't like to say lost because I feel like I know where he is. I feel like to be absent with from the body is to be present with God. And I know a lot of people may not agree with me because of the way he died, but the night before he died, we had a Bible study. He had prayed over me and over our family, and just not only that, he was a friend of his called and was talking about committing suicide, and he talked him out of committing suicide the night before he died. So God looks at the heart, and people look at the outer appearance and look at what you do on the outside, but God looks at your heart. And I believe Victor's heart was so that I believe he did make it to be with God. But you were asking me what, I'm sorry, I forgot.
That's okay. How you manage your grief or how you deal
How
with
I
grief or
managed my
coping
grief.
skills or the things for you.
So I managed, like I said, I don't feel like he's lost. I feel like I know where he is. And I'm encouraged by that because we had a conversation a couple of weeks before that, and before he passed, and we said that we wanted to not be here when the tribulation period came. And so I was like, wow, we just had that conversation. But I cope because I feel like um, he's no longer struggling with his addiction. He's no longer struggling with the childhood trauma and the things that he was dealing with. I don't feel like he's missing his mom anymore, his grandmother, or his son, because they all preceded him in death. And I just have a hope that I'll see him again. And I keep, I look at his pictures, and I post his pictures, and I think about him every day, and I think about all the good times and all the good memories, and all the things that we did together, and how we made a life together and helped to raise our children together. Um, I look at all those things and I have no regrets. I have no regrets. And I feel like he made it in, and that's how I cope. And not only that, if you don't agree with that, so I read my Bible, I listen to gospel music, I pray, and I spend time with my children and my grandchildren, and my grandchildren that are out of town. I like to talk to them and keep up with their parents and make sure they're okay. If I can FaceTime them, I'll FaceTime them. I spend time with my daughter who lives here and my two biological grandchildren, my only two biological grandchildren. And those things keep me encouraged. They keep me looking forward to the day when I will again be, I feel, with Victor. So I don't feel sad. And I did for the first month or two, maybe 3 months or so. And after that, I began to just feel encouraged. And I say, well, he made it in, and I feel like I know where he is, and he's not lost. So I don't say that. And I feel like one day I will see him again. And I'm encouraged by that. And I'm encouraged by the fact that the night before he died, the Bible study that we had,
Mm,
the prayer, because we prayed together often. And when we went to bed, we would pray before we go to sleep. And I would encourage him to pray most of the time because he was the head of the household. And the man prays, that's the head of the household. So I felt like that was important. And so no regrets, no regrets. And if I had it to do all over again with Victor, I would do it again.
mm. Thank you. What shifted from you no longer being ashamed?
Like I said, when I saw that young baby
That was
um
DMX's
advocating,
daughter. Okay.
that was the catalyst right there. I said, you know what, Tawana, this can happen to anybody. And if she can talk about it and advocate, after the passing of her dad, then I could speak about, my experiences with Victor and what we went through before his passing, and try to encourage someone that may not be aware, or even if they are aware, or if they're in denial, that it can happen to them, to encourage them to please stop, please seek help, reach out to your family and friends and tell them what you're going through, and let them help you. Help yourself, first, because another person can't pray it out of your life, and they can't wish it out of your life, and they can't make you do it. You've got to do it with God's help for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for sharing about who Victor was. And he was struggling with something, and the way he managed it was difficult. And thank you for encouraging other people to not be ashamed, to put a voice to their struggles, and to seek help. We have talked about quite a bit. Is there anything that when you thought about having this conversation, you wanted to talk about that we maybe didn't cover?
Right now, I can't think of anything else. I think I pretty much covered it all. And
Okay.
another thing I did want to say is, don't shame a person for being on drugs. Encourage them and love them in spite of. You know, we shouldn't we shouldn't point the finger and say you shouldn't and why you doing this and da da da. Don't do that. With love and kindness have I drawn thee, is what the Bible says. And it takes love, and it takes kindness, and it takes prayer, and it takes encouragement for a person to take that step and to seek the help that they need, and to get the help that they need, and to carry through. And it may take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tries for them to actually come to a point where they can quit, and quit for good and forever. But always be willing to be there and encourage them.
Thank you. I've been asking you a lot of questions. By chance, any questions you have of me or anything of that way at all?
I can't really think of any. I
Okay.
just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to come on this journey with you, this grief journey. I see how far you've come, and I recognize I was one of the founding members of the Facebook page. I remember when you sent me the invite, And I was like, oh, it's only about 20 people on here, but that's okay. I was like, I'm going to take part and be involved as much as I can be. And I just want to thank you for
Hmm.
allowing me to speak today and to share my story and to share Victor's story because it's one that a lot of people don't talk about and that you don't hear about often. So, thank you very much. And I look forward to your future podcasts. And I've watched many of the previous ones as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember when your cousin reached out to me and then I connected with you and we were just getting started. October made 1 year. And I remember thinking, okay, I don't know if anybody's going to want to join this because you look at some of these groups and they have thousands and thousands of people. But what I've also learned, there's a very small percentage of people that actually share and connect. So now I'm at the place that I'm okay if there's never thousands. What I want is people that share. And I feel like in our private Facebook group, there are some people that are kind of watching in the background, some people that are reading, and some people are engaging. And what I've learned that grief has a way of muting us, that we feel like our voice is gone, that we feel like maybe people don't care anymore. We've shared so much that we may have worn out everyone, but we all need a safe space and we need community as we are going through this difficult journey to know that we are not alone. So I am grateful for every person that follows, every person that has participated. And like yourself, people that have donated, and because we are a 501c3. And sometimes people go, oh, I thought it was just a podcast. Oh, I didn't know it was this and it was that. That there's different things that we're doing, helping people to get through this grief journey. So yes, Miss Founding Member, thank you so much for being a part of this and being on
My
this journey with
pleasure.
me. And I know people have other things. There's so much um, out there trying to get our attention on social media. So when people like yourself decide that this is where I want to be, I know they've thought it through because there's so many other things trying to grab our time. And but to find a place where you feel wanted and connected and valued is really important.
It
So, but if
is.
there are people listening to our podcast that are interested in joining the private Facebook group, we do have that. We have meetups twice a month. And I'm going to tell you something that I'll be announcing to the group because by the time this podcast airs, it'll already be starting. We have a gentleman in the group that's going to actually start hosting one of the meetups that we have in the evening. So he will be doing it on the second Thursday of the month, and I'll be doing it on the fourth Thursday because
Okay.
just as Victor struggled, I feel like men in our society struggle with having a safe space to talk about their struggles. So having this gentleman lead one of the groups, I think will create a space for men to want to participate and not have to hold so much in and have a place where they can share a safe space that they can talk about what they are grieving, whether it is the death of a loved one or other experiences in life. So we are super excited. So you have to hold that close. We'll be mentioning in the private
Okay.
group, I think December 15th, he'll have his information available. And I'm going to put it out starting in January. So we'll have twice a month on Thursdays. I mean, the ladies can go to his group, but I just think a man leading it will draw men in to want to be
Right.
part of that conversation. So that's what
Yeah.
we're hoping for.
Yeah, because most of the other groups that I've noticed on Facebook and that I'm involved in, they're for widows only and not widowers.
Right.
So just for the women and not for the men. And like you say, in society as a whole, there are so few places for men to feel safe and comfortable, talking about their feelings and their
Yes.
emotions. And it should not be that way. And Victor talked about that too when he was alive, that women have so many, outlets, but men have very few. Yes.
So we are definitely paying attention. We do have widows and widowers in our group. Our group is not a place for dating or connecting. It's a place where people are candidly
Right.
sharing their grief journey and trying to connect with people that understand them and try to understand what their life looks like forward. I'm going to let you close out this conversation with whatever last thoughts you want to share with the people that are listening.
I just wanted to say, if you know someone who is a widow or a widower and they tell you that they don't want to date and that they're at peace or comfortable being single and celibate, please respect that. Don't try to tell them, well, you need somebody and you shouldn't be alone. And that's their choice. That's their choice. That was the one thing that I did want to say that I had not said yet. So many people in my life try to encourage me to date, and I tell them, I'm at peace with being single and celibate. Even though I'm just 51, I'll be 52 in March. But at this time, I feel that way. And please respect people when they say that. And know that just because they say that now, life brings about changes. And sometimes it may change. But at this point, that's what I feel, and that's how I choose to be, and I'm at peace with that. I'm okay with that. Me and God, my mother that I take care of, my children, my grandchildren, my life is full and it's not empty, and I'm not alone or lonely. So I just wanted to mention that.
I think those are some great words of advice. Thank you so much for being here, Tawana.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here with me for this conversation. Thank you for taking into consideration the words and the wisdom that Tawana shared from her journey. I encourage you to look at the people in your life. And if you see some of those warning signs or other things that are questionable, be proactive. Do not silently let someone you love suffer. Encourage them to seek help. And if you are the person that is struggling, contact somebody, reach out. You are not alone on this journey. We are having this life experience together. Thank you again. And you are welcome to contact me at widowhoodrealtalk@gmail.com. Contact me on Facebook, all of our socials, or our website if you need help getting help so we can be of assistance. I will talk with you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.